All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. There's still some folks joining, but we can just get right into it so that everyone is able to hear the details of our new report that we're releasing today from California Teachers Association. It's the state of California's public schools. Today, we're going to be hearing from CTA President David Goldberg with details about getting into the weeds about the report. We will be sharing details of the report in a PDF in the chat and also emailing it out to folks afterwards as well. So you'll have access to all the information in the slides. We're also going to hear from Meg Marchand from GBAO Strategies, who helped conduct the report, and hear stories from the classroom from educators in California. So with that, I'd like to kick it off to CTA President David Goldberg. Let's see, David, can you
Here
hear
you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Wonderful. We're really excited to be able to share this results with you today from this report we've done. And a lot of it tracked stuff we already kind of knew. We know that teachers' wages, for example, have not kept up and folks are struggling to get by. And we know that classrooms would be bare without teachers opening up their own wallets to create beautiful spaces for our students. We also, many of us know just by in general that students are struggling to get the resources they need, and especially special education students. But I will say there is some stuff in this report that just astounded and surprised us and shocked us to our core. And that's really the sheer scale and magnitude of the economic hardship facing our students and our educators. The reality is that too many educators are spread thin and frankly aren't able to make ends meet financially and are working in a public school system that continues to be underfunded year after year. And I will point out that while this report today coincidentally is happening a day after I think Governor Newsom released his economic forecast and kind of budget, this has little to do with that. This has to do with decades and decades of disinvestment in public education. For more than 46 years, we've been working in scarcity in California, in a large part due to the passage of Prop 13, which has shifted resources that used to go to schools and working families to the richest corporations in the history of the world. It's the single biggest redistribution of wealth from working people and students and educators to corporations in the history of this nation, the history of this world. And so while we applaud some of the exciting stuff around universal TK and community schools investments we've seen recently, we want to take this moment to just point out the sheer devastation that our educators are feeling after decades and decades of disinvestment. And so we checked in with our folks in December. We felt like that was a good time, end of the year, to check in with people. And we talked to 2,000 educators across the states. And the results, as I said, are really eye-opening. And we're going to go through those today. And I'm going to take note of the moments when you can see the resilience as well, because even in this scarcity, what also came through in this report is just the resilience and the commitment that educators have to their students and to the profession, even under the hardest circumstances. Today I'm going to share with you, and we're all going to share with you, the top line results. And we'll also share a PDF of the finding with everyone here today as well. And then most importantly, as Rachel said, we're going to hear from stories on the ground from educators who we talk to. They're going to share their own stories about what this investment in them has meant for their own lives. This was a CTA commission survey of our members conducted by GBAO, and Meg Marchand from GBAO is here with us. And is going to be able to share some of the details and methodology later as well and be open to questions. So here are the results of what we found. And the first thing we found is a little context, and just want to level set that schools remain chronically underfunded and that educator pay is too low, that educators can't afford the housing near the workplace, and that classrooms are overcrowded. And you'll see here around this housing and around healthcare, you'll see the double whammy of how disinvestment and the inaccessibility, the quality healthcare and quality affordable housing is laid on top of this investment in educator pay, and how that's creating kind of a tsunami of factors that are making our lives and educator lives hard. And the other thing that I need to point out again is that this is a report that has, and context is California. And California, and I know all of you know this, but here's a great graphic to show you. California is not a poor state. California, in fact, you can't even really compare us to other states when you look at our economy. They compare our economy to other nations. So we're the fifth largest economy in the world if we were our own nation. But we're not even in the top 10 when we compare ourselves to other states in California. So that shows you the real disconnect from the wealth that exists in our state and the resources that are going to students and educators. So this is where we really talk about where we hear from this educators and what this actually means to them. And what does the gap mean for educators and their families? So when we look at it, 81% of California educators told us that salaries are not keeping up with the cost of everyday expenses. We have 84%, as I said, can't afford to live near their schools. 69%, this is maybe shocking to people because a lot of people think that educators have the best health care, even though they don't get paid well. They get good. We have people who are paying $1,500 a month to cover their family in healthcare, and 69% of them are not able to meet out-of-pocket healthcare costs. Those are huge issues for our members. 4 in 10 members of our educators who were surveyed are considering leaving education. And of those 4 in 10, 77% say it's financial strain that's influencing their decisions. 1 in 3 of younger educators are considering leaving, and 92% of them cite financial reasons. And so and this is, by the way, in a context where there are over 10,000 educator vacancies in public schools. And that's in California alone. And I say this because a lot of times the way the discourse around educator vacancies happen, as if it's a natural disaster, as if it's something beyond our control. But when you see the reasons that people are leaving, it is because disinvestment and the low pay and the inability to survive on the salaries. And that's something that we can and should actually put energy into citing if we want to deal with this educator vacancies. Here's how it looks for people struggling to save. And by the way, some of these will seem familiar to other people. Like 90% of educators who rent would like to buy a home and can't afford to. That's true of probably all workers in California. What's kind of less known is that 3 in 10 educators who are full-time employed are living paycheck to paycheck. And 54% of the ones surveyed don't even have enough reserves to cover 3 months of living expenses. That was a surprise to us about the deep economic instability and that people are feeling as educators. So this is something that, again, this is how people are making do. And a lot of this is about story that comes out of this is just how educators, even in the hardest times, are making do and making the system itself is based on us struggling. 30% of educators have taken on a second job or gig work to make ends meet. 37% have delayed or skipped medical care due to financial strain and the out-of-pocket costs that come with the health insurance that many of our educators have that's not meeting their needs. 82% have cut back on their family's budget, and 65% have skipped vacations or family events. These are not extra frills, as you can see. These are things that we consider part of just the everyday life that us as human beings and as workers, a dignified life would entail. And you see how a lot of educators are living with this scarcity around even these most basic things. And so this is another thing that came out to us. And this is a lot of times when we talk about education system, we talk about students and educators as kind of separate parts. One thing that really was very evident from this report is that the whole system is underfunded, and that impacts students and educators in devastating ways. But then we also saw that the thing that was coming very clear to us, there are a whole other Venn diagram of educators who are parents of students in our systems. And those people we don't really have a discourse around what that means, the double whammy of working in a system where your students are not getting what they deserve. For example, over 2/3 of parents say their inability to save money for their child or children's higher education is a major concern. So we used to have free public education in California. UCs used to be free. That's no longer free. That's been defunded. And at the same time, the salary of educators now make up that gap is also in crisis. So the financial strain of influence really is one of the things, again, that is really pushing educators to consider leaving the profession. 43% of the people we responded are educators who have children at home. This last section I want to go over has to do with, again, some broader context of how educators are experiencing, not just for themselves, but the disinvestment of education system as well, the kind of compounding scarcity and that people are feeling, both around their own paychecks, but around the system as well. So California, again, the fifth biggest economy, not compared to other states and compared to other nations, the fifth biggest economy in the world, is 48th in our nation for student access to school counselors. The ratio of students to social workers in California is 25 times greater than is professionally recommended. And I say this, our students are coming to school, and you can hear every educator who talks about almost different worlds, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And students are coming today with needs that are just not being met and should be met and would have to be met. The only way they're going to be met was an investment in what schools need around counselors, both academic counselors, but also mental health professionals. We also have some of the largest class size in the nation, the highest ratio of educator to student. So while we have the lowest ratio of being able to get counselors for students who are in your classroom struggle, we also have the highest ratio of students. So those students who are struggling are even more compounded and more likely to fall through the cracks and more likely actually impact other students in the classroom as well, as teachers just try to, on survival mode, try to help all their students who are just not getting what they need. More than 3/4 of our educators say that overcrowded classrooms are a serious issue at their school. So educator recruitment retention crisis is also exacerbated by waves of layoffs and school closures. And we saw this, and frankly, this is a fight we took up last year. We saw that we've actually seen districts in the past and in the present actually weaponize this crisis in a way that either through lack of foresight, lack of ability to really lead through hard times, go to their first, whenever there's an economic crisis, their first result is to go to layoffs, not understanding the devastation that layoffs do for people who are getting laid off. People get notices and even come back. Creates this cycle of people wanting to just leave this profession, of fear of about your future in this profession. Last year, by the way, this is the year after the single biggest increase in public education funding in the history of California. We still had last year, because of cyclical nature of funding in California, 2,000 layoffs at 100 districts across this state. Again, that's 2,000 lives that were upended by getting a notice that you likely will not be able to work here. Because of the struggles and the fight and the pushback, we ended up with only 417. That shows a disconnect of how districts go to this layoff mechanism far too early. as a way to kind of, and same with school closures that just disrupt families and communities. In the end, we have 417 people laid off. That means 1,600 too many people got layoffs, but really probably of those 417 districts also could have tried harder to keep those jobs as well. But I don't want to put, again, part of this report is also showing how districts are struggling and sometimes making bad decisions. But this is also decades of disinvestment in public education that leads to a scarcity mentality, even for superintendents and school boards. So here's where educator perspectives were on the key economic issues. So 77% of California schools, according to educators we surveyed, 77% don't feel that the California schools have the resources they deserve. And yet, and here's something I want to point out. And this is where the system, as I said, is basically run on us making it work. Because while 77%, and this is a coincidence that they're the same numbers, 77% don't believe that the state, and even 62% don't believe their districts has the resources they need to just survive. 77% of our educators, according to the survey, still find satisfaction in their jobs. And that is the gift that we get by committing ourselves to our profession, to our students, to building a state and a world where our lives are committed basically to spending time with the future generations. And that's still something that gives us incredible joy and then really allows us to continue to make this system work. But you see by these numbers here, the system should not work on the backs of the people who work in the system. That's the really point that's coming across through all this information. Here's some very serious issues that people see at their school, according to educators we surveyed. 84% say they lack enough funding at their schools, inadequate resources. Again, these issues of overcrowded classrooms, and 68% around mental health support. And this is, by the way, where if you listen to the rhetoric around what's going on in public education, you would hear how important it is to lean into school mental health services. And yet our ratio in California of counselors, they said, is one of the worst in the nation. And our mental health support, as you see from here, is not meeting the basic needs of our students. This is a crisis deep in the making, is something we have to continue to take on. I'll end with this slide. This is a slide again on us making it work. 93% of our members have purchased school supplies with their own funds. So we talk about how educators are just already making it, trying to make the system work, putting off their own vacations, because of high out-of-pocket expenses, their own medical stuff. And yet, they themselves are investing hundreds of dollars into their students. In fact, something that's interesting and both beautiful and tragic is that the educators who are investing the most in their classrooms are the ones that are the newest educators making the least money. Often those educators come from the communities they serve and have a real affinity with these students and say, this is my community, my people, and that their life is already committed to serving those people. They shouldn't also have to be coming out of their own pocket to meet the most basic needs. I remember as an educator myself, every week I would get a bag of oranges at the farm market and peanut butter sandwiches, and especially at the end of the month when people's food stamps went out, students are just on survival mode. And understanding that what we do to support students is a beautiful thing. And yet it shouldn't be based on us doing that. That shouldn't be coming out of our pockets. That should be the system that's looking after the needs of our students and our educators to keep us all whole. So that's kind of both the beautiful part of our commitment and what we do to this, but also kind of the tragic narrative about what's going on in public education, a crisis that is decades in the making and something we're going to have to take big steps to really undo. So next, I'm going to call back up Rachel, and I know we're going to hear from some of the methodology about how we actually did this. So yes.
Yeah, thanks, David. One quick announcement too is that folks can use the Q&A if you have any questions around any of the data that's David shared, or any other questions too. the Q&A function is open to folks, and you can always email us afterwards too. But with that, we're going to pass it over to Meg Marchand with she's a partner with GBAO Strategies, who we worked with to conduct the study of members. So Meg, this should work for you now. All good to go? Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, David. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you for having me. Again, I'm Meg Marchand. I work at GBAO with our education research, and we conducted the survey on behalf of CTA. I'm going to do a quick overview of the methodology. We conducted the survey December 1st through the 6th and reached 1,995 members of the California Teacher Association, so almost 2,000. Respondents were emailed a survey invite and took the survey online. And the demographics are all weighted to be reflective and representative of the full membership of CTA. Now, these members are active educators in TK-12 schools and include certified and classified members, so classroom teachers, specialized instructional support personnel like counselors and nurses, special area teachers, education support professionals. We reached a wide variety of positions here. And the survey was conducted statewide. So we heard from members who work in schools across different areas, suburban, urban, and rural areas. And one of the findings that I want to emphasize here is that the results that you are seeing here in the report that we just went over is true across the board. So with geography, whether they work in suburban, urban, or rural areas, educators are feeling immense financial strain. Across partisanship and political ideology, Democrats, conservatives, they're all concerned and don't feel that schools have enough resources to meet the needs of students. And age, it's not just younger, early educators who are really grappling with this and struggling to get by, but older members, veteran educators, they're also struggling to save due to the cost of everything. And so while we are talking about these trends overall, we also see it across these stats and want to emphasize that these numbers are big overall, but also big across these different demographics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. Next, we're going to be hearing stories from educators in the classroom quite literally today on break at the work site. We're going to start with Christina Caswell, TK, that's transitional kindergarten educator in the Sacramento area. And this should work. I think Christina's maybe off in a break room right now. Christina, can you hear us okay? Okay,
Yes,
great.
yes, I can.
Christina,
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Caswell. Like Rachel said, I'm a TK teacher in the Sacramento area at a public school. I've been teaching TK for many years now. And I have a family of 5, myself, my husband, our 3 kids. We have a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 19-month-old. I want to speak a little bit about the rising cost of healthcare and how that's impacted my family. My husband's employer does not offer health insurance. They're a very small business, and so we receive health insurance through my employer. And recently, there has been a significant increase in the monthly cost of our healthcare, just because everything is going up in price. And I have had to take that on as the employee on my own without any additional support from my employer. And it's been so significant that the raise that I did receive this year, moving from last year, has basically gone away due to the increase in the health insurance for my family of 5. And when I was doing a little bit of research about the rising cost of healthcare, I went on to Covered California and used their affordability tool. And I discovered that the amount that I'm paying for a family of 5 is not considered affordable healthcare. And so, as anyone can imagine, with the consideration of everything going up, housing, my monthly bills, groceries, I'm still paying my student loans, and my daughter's daycare so that my husband and I can work is incredibly, incredibly expensive. And as the costs continue to rise, I just find myself putting my own health needs kind of aside. And even something that David said, without a second thought, I will spend money on my students before I will think about going to that doctor's appointment that I need and spending that money on maybe a prescription that I maybe need in case, if I get sick or something like that. That's something I stop and think about. Whereas when I'm thinking about my students, I don't think about spending the money, which is an interesting conundrum. I simply just don't have the extra budget. I have a hard time saving money and setting it aside so that I don't have to pause and think about if I can afford something for my health. I'm really thankful and grateful that I have the job that I have. I absolutely love my job. I adore my students. I adore the families that I serve. And I'm really grateful that I am a part of a bargaining unit that can continue to negotiate and keep my position as an educator a viable income for me and my family. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Christina. And yeah, just want to emphasize that point. There's something that we saw a lot in this report is actually educators who are struggling with the cost of healthcare. And it's a trend that a lot of folks, or even just, it used to be that becoming a public school teacher meant that it came with the promise of being able to purchase a home and raise a family and have access to healthcare benefits. And we're seeing more and more, especially in the survey and with stories like Christina's, it's just actually not the reality. Many educators don't have healthcare benefits through their employer, and it's struggling to make ends meet with those soaring costs. So just, Christina, deeply appreciate you for being here and for all of the work you're doing with students in the classroom even today. And I want to just emphasize too, for any reporters on this webinar, we can help connect you with educators who have stories in your local communities similar to Christina's as well. Unfortunately, there are way too many. So with that, we'll go to our next educator. Joining us from the classroom is Carolina Sanchez Garcia from the San Diego area. Carolina, can you hear us okay? I know the sound was a little, okay, great. Go for it. And now we can't hear you. We heard you a second ago. So I don't know if you need to switch your microphone. No, let's try one more time because I want to make sure folks hear your story. Oh, so sorry. We heard you in the testing. It was working. I'm gonna keep talking for a minute. You keep trying to speak because we want to make sure folks hear you. Just keep going through your mic options. No. So Caroline is actually going to speak about the soaring cost of housing in the San Diego area. It's an incredibly difficult area to live in. And no, Carolina, we're not able to hear you, but what we can do is actually go to David to speak towards the end. And if at any point we hear your voice, we're going to cut over to you because we definitely want to hear from you. Okay, so keep trying. I don't know what's going on. We're just having these webinar technical difficulties that evokes years of teaching virtually, but we'll get there. David, you back on, able to speak?
I am. And Carolina, what I did is I went to my mute thing, and you can unmute. There's different options.
Like an arrow.
And there's an arrow, and you pick the different ones, and one of those will hear your voice. But no, not. But as soon as you say something, Carolina, I'm gonna be like I'm just stop talking. Okay, you keep trying. You figure it out. But by the way, Carolina, you were speaking already today, whether you knew it or not, because every time I was reading my things, I was seeing you shake your head just like this. And so what I knew is that this report was resonating with you, and this report really is speaking to a real crisis we're having here. And look, educators like Carolina, like all of us, we go into this, and Christina as well, knowing that this is a gift. It is a calling, and it is a gift to be able to do our work. And we know that this calling sometimes requires sacrifice. We know this. When we don't go in education, none of us, if any of us did, we were surely disabused of that idea that on day one, when we got our first paycheck, that you don't go into educator to be wealthy. But that doesn't mean you should have to decide between meeting out-of-pocket costs for prescription benefits or what your students needs. That is something that is inexcusable in a society, like I said, the fifth biggest economy in the world. To have to do that is unconscionable. And so you're going to hear, we're using this report is important for us and for me and for all of us. And for you, I hope, reporters to kind of get the depth of what's going on with our educators. And for us as a union, it's also important for us to use this to think about how we do a number of things. One is how we at a local level really bargain around these issues, these deep inequities, and how we continue to fight around needs of our students that were laid out here, but also the needs of our members. The other thing is we're knowing that this is not an issue that can just, when we hear from 2,000 people from 100 different locals, that means this is not just individual to one single local. You know, what Christina was talking about in her local is not something, these are members across the state who are also having exorbitant out-of-pocket fees. And so that means this has also got to be part of a statewide struggle for us around public education funding. Again, this is not a single governor's, this is not in the making of a single one person. This is bigger than this. This is decades of disinvestment. And so you're going to be hearing from us in the next months connected to this report. This report is also going to be some fuel about how we talk to our own members, because we also know that there are members across the state who are also beginning to think about statewide how we take action to really get the funding our students need and also our educators need to just survive. So thank you all to the press and for other members of our community for joining us today. I'll go back to Rachel, see if there's any questions. And Carolina, if you get unmuted, we're here for you. Yeah, todavía no. Not yet. No.
Oh man, the virtual, I think folks were not with us today, but you know what we can do is actually, we see a couple reporters in the list from the Southern California area. If you want to hear directly from Carolina or any of our other educators, we can help connect you with them. We want to make sure their voices are heard. I didn't see any questions coming from the Q&A. That said, we dropped the full survey report into chat. If you have any follow-up questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be sending out a press release for all the folks who were online today with more details around the speakers, and then even who you can reach out to help schedule interviews with local educators in your communities as needed. With that, Carolina, one more try. Oh, sorry. Sorry. We appreciate you being here, and then we'll try to figure out a way to get your story out maybe on social media later today. Take care, everyone. We'll talk soon. Have a good rest of your day.